Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my live streams. This is the Comics Today show, a show that we do on Wednesday night to celebrate the best day of the week, that being New Comic Book Day. And I will tell you, one of the cool things about being a creator in this community is you never know how a day is going to go. You never know what surprises will creep up over the course of the day. And early this morning, I received a message from a subscriber. Technically, I can divulge this. It was the OG Tina. She brought something to my attention. And I had not heard of this thing prior to Tina sending me this message early this morning. And like 2 hours, an hour or so after Tina's, notification, that very entity actually reached out to me. So I sent Tina a message. I said, "Did you tell these people about me?" She said, "No, I didn't." And so it was just a really interesting thing that not only did that opportunity come my way, there was another opportunity that came my way as well today. And so it's just one of those things, you never know how a day is going to unfold. But all of this is just another demonstration of how we all love comics. And that is actually the theme of what we are going to talk about tonight. We are going to have 4 guests. I think there's going to be 4 total guests that are going to come on the show and talk about something that I have been talking about for a very long time. And that thing is this: we all enjoy comics in a slightly different way from one another. And that is actually okay. It is okay that I like spandex and superheroes and somebody else likes horror or, some other genre or time period. And so, it's fine because it's all comics at the end of the day. So we are going to have 4 members of the comic book community coming on talking about how it is that they celebrate comics. And we're going to see an illustration, if you will, of how they love comics. And I think it's going to be a pretty interesting conversation. At least that is my hope. One of the things that we always do on this show, Comics Today, is we spend some time going to the chat and getting people that hit the LCS to throw up in the chat what it is that they picked up at their LCS. If they picked up something really cool and read it, let us know that so we can put it on the top of our stacks. And I will tell you, I did not make it to the comic shop today. Today, as I kind of alluded to, was a day that got away from me with some unexpected surprises. So I did not make it to the comic shop, but I did have a package come from mycomicshop.com. And I'm going to show you the book that I actually picked up in here in just a second. But I do want to go to the chat real quick to see what you guys may have picked up from the LCSs today. And there was a robust chat that is actually going on. So I want to go to the chat here and see what people picked up. My man Mark Andrews never lets me down. My Canadian brother, he picked up Time Before Time #3, James Bond, issue #5, Philadelphia 15, Firefly, New Verse #5, Moon Knight book, Gamma Flight, Savage. You picked up a lot of stuff. And I know how you actually transported some of your books home, because you sent me a photo earlier today of the Comics to Go box stuffed with all of that good stuff right there. Canada and Reggie get along quite well. So shout out to you, brother. Definitely appreciate it. Shadows picked up, what is that? Red Sonja, Black, White, and Red. I do believe that is a Dynamite book. Invincible Red Sonja, also a Dynamite book. ENIAC, Basilisk, I think that's how you say that. #2, Spawn's Universe. #1, the F cover variant. Spawn 319, Nocterra. Nocterra, a couple of Green Lantern books. Good stuff. Kimball picked up Marauders 22 and I Make Boys Cry. Do you indeed? I Make Boys Cry. #2 picked that up. Burke family in the house. How you doing, brother? He said, "I didn't get to the shop today. It's my wife and I." Oh, man, happy anniversary, brother. That is all right. I'm going to be honest with you, Burke family. If you want to make it to 10, you might not want to stay for this whole live stream, my friend. That's all I'm saying to you. I want you to make it to 10. So if you have to go, you have to go. L. Smith, who is someone that never lets me down. This guy picks up some awesome books every week. What is that? Alien 5, Marauders, Moon Knight, picked up a few covers of that. Nottingham. What is it? Savage Avengers, Undiscovered Country. A couple of cool books there, man. A little Vampirella going on. So Dynamite is definitely making a few people's list. There you go. That's what's a Master Blasters in the house. How you doing? One of the Blue Wrenches. Good to see you, my friend. People giving all kinds of congratulatory comments to Burke family. Well, Burke and family is probably what I should say. But again, happy anniversary, brother. Tina, the OG, is in here. It's always good to see you, my friend. Giving gang, stand up. Scrolling through the comments, trying to stare around my computer. Maybe I should just close the screen a little bit there. Scrolling through the comments, seeing what else people picked up. Jeff is in here. How you doing, brother? He said he is locked down in the land down under, but he got to the LCS to ship his books out. He picked up Uncanny X-Men 130. And the first Dazzler, well, it's a nice book. And then ASM 36, very, very good. We even have subscribers in Canada. How cool is that? Scrolling through some of the comments, seeing what else you guys picked up. No, brother, do what you got to do. Okay. If the wife is trying to spend some time, you do what you have to do. Before this, I was taking out trash and yard clippings to the front because that's what was on my honeydew list. Let me see. Scrolling through. YZ says, I didn't get a single issue, but getting a package tonight with Absolute Swamp Thing, the Donny Cates Thor Volume 1 and Hellblazer Volume 1. Hope your package arrives in a timely fashion. Shout out to you, brother. My man, Just Pele, I think, has made 3 live streams in a row. It is good to see you, brother. He put up a post or a comment the other day, said that he was bundling up some 90s goodness to send off to CGC. This guy owns a comic shop. He owns a comic shop, and his stack of submissions is probably a little bit larger than your average, right? He's sending in, I think he said, about 500 books into CGC. That's a lot of books. That's a lot of books, bro. I'm gonna just tell you that there have to be some 9.8s somewhere in that stack. So good luck with the submission, my friend. Matt is looking for some suggestions here. So if you have suggestions for what Matt should pick up when he hits the LCS, make sure you throw those up. Help a brother out. Jamie is in Canada. We love the Canadians. It's good to see you. Trace is given an endorsement for Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing says it is pretty good. That's what's up. Scrolling through, what is this? Reggie A, who spells his name, I don't know whether it's correct or incorrect. I don't know. Picked up a lot of books from 5 and below, but the wife won't give them to him until Friday. So wait a minute, you're telling me your wife is holding your comics hostage until Friday? I don't know what to say. Scrolling through some of the comments here, seeing what else you guys are talking about. Tina's giving some congratulations. I did a live stream. With somebody yesterday, and I did it's basically a Q&A with some guys. And I started talking about the Blue Wrenches and the people that show up to every live stream as being like one of the reasons why the live streams we have are so fun. And there were several mentions of this woman on screen, several mentions of her because she is definitely foundational to things that happen around here. Shout out to you, my friend. 2021 New Age Investments picked up a couple of books, Dark Blood, Extreme Carnage, Moon Knight, Radiant Black. That's one I haven't seen. I haven't seen a Radiant Black shout out, I don't feel, in a little while. Alien number 5. Isn't that the full first appearance of the Alpha Xenomorph? I think that's the first full. I think the cameo was issue number 1. At least that's what I said in the video that you guys will see tomorrow. Scrolling through, Philtastic did not make it this week. We didn't go this week, but went last weekend and picked up a bunch of X-Men number 1 variants, among other things. More variants than Loki. He says, well done. Well played, sir. Well played. I have a feeling we potentially will see more variants in season 2 of Loki when it drops. My man, Ed, how you doing? He picked up Moon Knight, Dark Blood, Nottingham 5, Miles Morales. Oh, man, I'm going to tell you right now. There is a video that's coming out about Miles Morales. I can't wait to record this video. Okay. I am super pumped about it. Picked up the Captain America variant. That is a dope cover. That is a dope cover with Miles in the Cap uniform. We talked about that here on the show a couple of weeks ago. That is a dope cover. Congrats on that one. Time Before Time 1 through 3, Miss Marvel 13 and 16. Shout out to my man. Here. here was the channel. This is the channel that I was on yesterday. Thank you for the super chat, brother. Is that my payment for my appearance yesterday on the live stream? Maybe that's my payment. I definitely appreciate that. I could have taken it in the form of, the thank you message that you sent me yesterday. But thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be on the show. If you guys haven't subbed him up, be sure to do that. Remy Q Studios, if you want to put a link up in the chat here, feel free to do so. That way it'll make it a little bit easier for people to be able to find you. But again, thank you for having me on the show. It was an absolute pleasure. My man Joe is in here. He said, we'll be going down to Manhattan and we'll stop by Midtown Comics tomorrow. I've hit several of those Midtown comic shops. I've never truly been impressed by them. I mean, they're nice shops, but it's, I don't know, it has a different feel to it. I feel like the Midtown shops have a different feel to them. Maybe it's the flight of stairs that I have to walk up to get to them. I don't know. Maybe that's it. But good luck getting in there to get your books, Joe. It is always good to see you. Thank you for hanging out just a little bit. And I don't want to belabor getting to our guest here for too long. So I will show you guys the books that I picked up. As I mentioned, I did not get to the LCS today. The day just got away from me, but I did get a package from my comic shop. And what I ended up picking up was this. The Jock cover. I saw this on my comic shop a couple of weeks ago. I thought it was like super creepy, like just super creepy. So I went ahead and snagged it. There is a virgin version of this that I did not find, but I did snag this. I got all kinds of aggressive with it. Got all kinds of aggressive. Picked up 3 copies of it. Square bound book, guaranteed 9.8s. Guaranteed 9.8s with the binding job that they did with that. If I decide to send that one in, just a cool book to have in the collection. If it never gets graded, it'll go into the collection. And I hope to be able to finish working my way through that book, because I started it twice. I haven't made it all the way through, but fingers crossed that I will be able to make it through. So as a reminder, what is that? Monique says, hi, Reggie, finally made it. I'm not used to this new there. So here's the thing, Monique, there are a lot of people that are still making the adjustment to the time change. So I definitely get it. A lot of people are still struggling with it. But we are happy to have you. We're happy to have anybody that can make their way here. And even those folks that watch it on replay, we are definitely thankful. Harvey Abel's asking a question here. Reggie, any plans to visit a certain mount south of your new home state? I have no plans. I am going to be traveling to Washington, D.C. here soon. Buddy of mine, you guys remember him, Rodney, who came on the show. Rodney is actually getting married in August, and I am going to go support him and hang out with him before the wedding. And I guess I'm going to be like his, I don't know, personal valet. I don't know these COVID restrictions that they have up there, but I'll be there to support him as he gets married. And I'm very excited about that. So I'm also going to be in Chicago at some point. I'll be in Chicago, I want to say the 23rd, 24th, and then I'll be in Maryland the 26th, 27th. I think those are the dates. So no other plans outside of that, but I will tell you, I had a conversation earlier today that will possibly put me on a plane going somewhere to hang out with some cool people. So I'm definitely excited to see that come to fruition. But as a reminder, this live stream that we are doing right now on Wednesday, Comics Today, is actually going to be rebroadcast, if you will, as part of our podcast. So if you're not, taking Reggie on the go, you definitely want to check out the podcast. It is available on all the platforms that are out there. If you search on your favorite podcasting platform for Reggie Collects, you will find me. But we bundle this show up and we put it out on the podcast so that you can actually take a little Reggie on the go. I lived in DC for 12 years, brother. Yeah, it is hot. It's sweaty. It's just par for the course, but you have to go. You have to go when your buddy's getting married, and you stand next to him or with him or whatever. You just sweat right alongside of him. That's just what you do. So as I mentioned, we are going to spend some time talking with a couple of comic book collectors from the community about how they choose to collect comics, right? And one of the things that we've spoken about a lot and the community as a whole talks about is that there is no wrong way to collect comics. However you choose to collect comics, then that's the right way. If it makes you happy, then that's the right way. If it brings you satisfaction and joy and all that kind of stuff, that is the right way. So I've invited on 4 guests to talk with me like one-on-one about, you know, what it is that they collect and the rationale behind it, all in service of demonstrating how we love comics. So the very first guest that I want to bring to the show is my buddy Wayne. Wayne, it is good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too, Reggie.
Oh, the sound is crisp. Ooh.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I was worried before I got on here.
Did you wear the red shirt to like match the background here of the channel?
No, I just grabbed a Reggie shirt.
Maybe it's because all my shirts are red.
It's an honor of you.
It is good to see you, my friend. What people don't know, man, is that this is actually not the first time that you and I have spoken. Right. We've actually spoken during several Patreon only chats. And in fact, you actually ran a chat for me at one point when I had to step away because I think that somebody came to the house or something like that. I was like, Wayne, can you just take over real quick?
Yeah, I think you got a delivery and it was like, I didn't really take over. I just sat there and said, so what do you guys want to talk about? And everyone just started talking. So,
but you kept it going. You kept it going. And I that might have been like our first or second Patreon only chat, I want to say, but I was very appreciative. And then I had the epiphany that I've never actually had you on the show, right? Live. So I wanted to change that. And I wanted to reach out to you. You are a demonstration of, if you will, the diversity that we are trying to put on display, right? Because first, you're a Canadian and we love Canadians, right? But then you're also someone that has collected comics for a while. How long have you been a comic book collector?
I collected comics. I started when they were, I think, 50 cents. So let's say 1980. When it's 81, 82, when I was young, I used my pocket money to go buy comics, and I collected steadily for 10 years, like really solid. Like I would go to the LCS, I would take public transit, travel like 30 minutes downtown, hit all the shops in an area every week religiously. And then I got really annoyed when the prices got to about $1.50 per cover price. Now I'm not going to pay that anymore. And I was going into university and I thought, I've got to spend my money elsewhere. And I stopped collecting for like 25, almost 30 years. And I got back into the hobby maybe 2.5 years ago. Much like you, you stepped away for a long time and you came back. So
what's crazy though is that when you stepped away was when I was stepping in, because I remember when comics were like $1, $1.25, $1.50. That was my prime time. And I wish I had been getting them when they were like 50 cents. That would have been amazing. But I wasn't aware of comics back then. But one of the questions that I have for you is when you take a step away from your collection and you look at your collection, how would you describe it to people, your focus, if you will?
One of the things some people know about me, and people might find this strange, is that I actually don't buy new comics. I did when I first got back into the hobby. I would go to the local comic shop here where I live, and I started buying books. And I just realized I'd rather spend my money on older books. So my focus is mostly Bronze Age, Silver Age. I've never gotten into Golden. I do have a lot of Copper too, because that was my time period. My goal is to go back and collect runs of books that mattered to me when I was younger, filling in runs of books that I maybe picked up something when I was in the 80s, but it maybe started in the 70s, and I never kind of I want to fill those gaps. And even the books I read, I'm a little old school like that. I just started reading Savage She-Hulk. I never read the full run. I'm trying to get the full run and read the full run because that's like kind of a cool period. And I'm getting all those little series that popped up in the 70s that had short runs, especially the DC ones like Starfire, Claw, the DC Hercules, Secret Society Supervillains. Those are things that I really love.
So is it a nostalgic thing for you, or is it a little bit more than this nostalgic thing? Is it a little bit of you trying to be a completist as well?
There's an nostalgia, there's being a completist, and there's also looking to get some of those books too, like one of the things I'm trying to do now is get keys, both minor and major keys that I could never afford back when I was younger. So I'm going back and trying to pick up books that were like, wow, like I remember seeing this on the wall of my LCS and it was $200. And when you're like 15 years old, that's like insane.
That's like
of course,
all
now
the
that
money
book is
in the
like
world.
$10,000. The book's
That's
$10,000.
like that's like all the money in the world as a teenager, you know?
It's still all the money in the world because it's $10,000 now. But my goal is to start going back and filling in runs and getting keys and buying books, selling books, taking the money from selling the books and putting back into my collection to buy bigger books or better quality books and just get a collection that makes me happy.
There you go. If you had to pick a favorite title or two, what do you think that favorite title or two would be for you and why?
Favorite title, All-Star Squadron, and that's only because the very first book I ever remember buying with my own pocket money was All-Star Squadron 1 at a local convenience store for like 50 cents when I was a kid. I bought that and Fury and Firestorm #1, and I just collected those. And so every time I find an All-Star Squadron, I buy it. I've got some of those issues. I've got like 10 copies of it just because every time I see it, I buy it because I love it. I love it. It just feels warm.
That's like me and Invaders, brother. I see an Invaders book.
Is another one that I love because
my
brother, Invaders. I love Invaders. My brother collected Invaders, and so I used to flip through his Invaders, and so that's another one that just I love that whole time period and genre of like World War II based superheroes. I love. Probably another one that I love is the original Incredible Hulk run. I mean, I have now trying to get older books from the Silver Age and to kind of fill in the run, but I got a lot of the 70s, a lot of the 80s. And just having that building that collection, having that full story is so important to me.
And you've also been rebagging and boarding your entire collection, right? I think last time I saw on Instagram, you were like on the Bees or something.
I was on the Bees. I'm already at, I think, 21 boxes, and I just finishing the Bees. And I just found a bunch of A's and B's I missed, so I've got about another 2 short boxes. They're all short boxes, not long boxes. But I'm starting to guess my collection's probably in the 9,000 to 10,000 book range at this point. Yeah, it's a little overwhelming.
That's a lot of books, brother. Trust me, I know a lot of books.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the other things that I know about you is that you also have a special place for the Whitman variants, correct?
Yeah, I love Whitman variants too. There's something, it's kind of a niche. There's not a lot of niches I feel comfortable like getting into, but something about Whitman variants I love, like especially rare Whitman variants. It's fun for me to try to scope them out and hunt them down. I look at a lot of general auctions, more than just comic auctions, general auctions, and you can find some really cool and interesting books that didn't have a high circulation that showed up in those poly bags back in like 79, 80. Like one of the rare ones is Beyond the Black Hole #4. I actually got that in a stocking when I was a kid from my parents. And so
do you still have it?
I still have it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be sending it to CGC. It's a little beat up. It's probably a 6.0, but
well, it was rolled up in a stocking, brother. So yeah,
it was rolled up in a stocking. Yeah, my parents like to make it look like I had more stuff. They would tear open the poly bag and then they put each book in individually. But it's 1979.
That's my parent. That's what. No, brother, I do that now with my kids. If it comes in a pack, I break it open. I spread that stuff around. We hide stuff to make it look bigger, right? But no, that's pretty cool. So what? But what is it about the Whitmans that speak to you, right? Because people know newsstands. People get excited about a newsstand. Mark Jewelers, they get excited about that. A lot of people think of Whitmans are reprints and don't get excited about Whitmans at all.
I don't know if it's because people don't go for them. They're not a huge they're a niche people recognize, but people don't really see a major value in them. And I think in a lot of cases, depending on the book, there can be some major value. There's a DC Comics Presents Whitman variant, the one with Superman and Captain Comet. I think it's like number 22 or whatever. And that's extremely rare to find. And it's just the fun of the hunt of picking certain Whitman variants that I know are hard to find.
Yep.
And or going to and seeing an auction lot and see a whole bunch of Whitman variants and just finding some that are in nice condition. There's just, it's that little thrill you find. Just like some people find a thrill of finding just, like a major key in a box. I get a thrill finding a comic that most people would throw away and not think about and going, wow, this is an awesome condition. And I know there's not a lot of these.
Yep.
And having that knowledge and feeling like, oh, I've scored something. That's the best feeling.
So when it comes to your Whitman variants, right? Do you have a Whitman variant box, or do you put the Whitman with the title itself? I'm curious about, like, how do you organize that?
With the title itself.
Okay.
I'm an administrative professional by trade, so I have this thing about organization. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this. Like, I had trouble going Avengers, West Coast Avengers becomes Avengers West Coast. Is it W or is it A? And then I get like all panicky, like, where does it go? Where does it go? Because I keep thinking it's got to go somewhere like correct, or I'll be really annoyed with myself if it's not in the right spot. So, but no, everything alphabetical. It's got to be alphabetical.
You would be very disappointed in my collection.
Hey, you have 100,000 in your garage. I totally get that. It doesn't make sense. You should see the mess that I have right now. That's why it's taking me like months to go through it.
Because it is overwhelming.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it's a lot. It doesn't matter how big it does matter. Like if your collection is like 100 books, it's like super easy, right?
Yeah.
But beyond a certain point, it becomes a little unwieldy. But
Yeah.
Wayne, I want to thank you, brother, for coming on, for hanging out with me for a little bit here, helping us to understand like who you are, what you collect, and all that kind of stuff. We're going to have you come back on. We're going to have to find some rationale, some topic to bring you back, because I enjoy my interactions with you. So I want to thank you for that. But before I let
you want me, I want one of those little punch cards.
That's between you and the Blue Wrenches. I don't get involved in those punch cards, okay? But before I let you go, where can people find you on the social medias? I think you have a YouTube, right? Where can people find you on the social media if they want to interact with you more?
On YouTube, I have a channel. It's Squirrel Madness Comics, 2 words. And if you find me on Instagram, it's at Squirrel Madness _comics.
Got it. Again, brother, we are going to have you back. I appreciate you hanging out with me. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Reggie.
So I cut him off a day, and that was my bad. So again, Wayne is one of those guys that I talk to fairly often, right? I talk to him fairly often. I enjoy my interactions with him. He's been in, as I mentioned, the Patreon only chat several times. And I always enjoy talking to him. He has one of those voices that I enjoy listening to, which is a good thing. But speaking of voices, we're going to bring somebody on the show, somebody that has, again, I'm not going to talk about these punch cards, but somebody that has several holes already in his punch card. My man, Donald, how are you, brother?
Greetings, good people. Greetings, Reggie. How you doing now?
Every time. I'm doing good, man. It is good to see you, brother.
Excellent. Good to see you as well. I now have my top row all filled out. I don't want to do it because it's just great. It's just great. Master Blaster, you did a freaking great job, man.
Somebody asked me, it might have been Mark Andrews. He was like, so what happens when they fill up the punch card? I said, first of all, I don't get involved. I don't get involved in that punch card stuff. I don't know what happens. I didn't create it.
If anybody will figure out something, it's going to be Master Blaster.
probably he'll send me a message, Reggie. Here, I think you should do this. That's how Master Blaster sends me messages, like when he wants me to do something, you know. So, I appreciate you coming on, brother, and I wanted to have you on because I think that what you collect and how you collect is actually slightly different from Wayne, from Squirrel Madness. It is not better. It is not worse. It's just slightly different. So I wanted to have you come on. And the first question that I have for you is, when you think about your collection, what has been your main focus for your collection?
Well, my main focus has changed throughout the years. I think all of us who have collected in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, even have had time to grow and maybe change course in your collection. For example, when I was first collecting back in the early or mid 1980s, my main focus was Amazing Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four. I know Anachronic Comics, Joe, you know, just forgive me, but I did not collect DC.
Yeah.
Didn't collect DC back in the day. I just didn't. And I didn't collect many other independents. Even when Image came out, didn't collect Image.
Yep.
So those were my main focuses. It was pretty much only Marvel. Yep. Then I got out of the hobby and got back into the hobby. Maybe say about 4 or 5 years ago or so. And that's when, yes, I did start to collect Amazing Spider-Man again, because throughout those collectings, I realized that my run was almost done. So I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can go finish the run. And we've had several conversations, and you've actually helped me complete that run last year. So now I have a full of Amazing Spider-Man. So in between that time, that's when my focus began to change. I actually have a full box of DC. And back in the day, that was absolutely unheard of. So thank you. But also I realized that I didn't have a lot of comics that featured Black characters.
Yeah.
And I felt that was important, because then I started to research on Black comic characters, and I realized that there was a whole lot that I had missed out on. And it's just amazing how many Black comic characters that were published all the way back in the 1930s that were just obscure. And then, of course, more came with the onset of the Silver Age. Yeah. That's when a lot of black comic characters began to get popularized, and then it just went on and on. And I realized that, hey, this is pretty cool. I think it'd be pretty cool to collect the first appearances of these Black comic characters, and so that's what I began to do.
But that's technically not all that you've begun to do, right? You started creating content to raise awareness of those Black characters, helping other people to be aware of them, like me, where I was like, who are you talking about? And I thought that was one of the cool things. Not only did you have this epiphany, you actually started to do your research, and then you turned that research into something that other people could benefit from as well. And I thought that was really cool, right? I think you started doing it primarily on Instagram, and then I think you've also moved over to YouTube. Did I get anything incorrect in there? And what would you layer on or add to that?
Nope, not at all. You're absolutely correct. I began to see that, yes, there were avenues. There was occasional videos that would feature Black comic characters, but there's a few channels, and there's a few Instagram profiles that actually have a lot of great Black comic characters. Black Key Comics, if you check him out on Instagram, he has a great collection, absolutely great collection. And Black Comic Lords on YouTube. Yeah, he's another one who also has a lot of nice content on Black comic characters. So what I wanted to do is, I'm into history. So what I first began to do was I started to look at Black comic characters through each of the comic ages. So that's how I started to began, because I wanted to at least first give a general overall history of Black characters in comics. Yep. And from that point, I just went on and just diverted off to character profiles, subjects, certain news, and anything else that I might actually find, because there's just a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there.
Yep. Somebody actually reached out to me because I think I've mentioned on the show before about, I think it's called Black Man is a comic.
Yep.
And I've never seen this comic in person. Somebody actually reached out to me.
Hard to find, man.
I know. Somebody reached out to me 2 days ago and was like, "Hey, you mentioned that you've never seen this. I have one. It's not for sale, but you can see it." That was basically the message. They were like, "I'm not selling this, but if you want to meet up, you can check it out." And I thought that was cool. I thought that was cool that somebody would offer that up. I don't want to go see it, because it's like window shopping, it's like window.
Exactly. That's one that you were like,
Yeah. I was like, I want to see it, but I want to come home with it.
Right. Exactly.
So
that's one that's on my list. That is one that's on my list.
I have several on my list, brother, and they are not cheap. They are not cheap, and they are not easy to find. But it is as a history minor, I appreciate what those comics represent. You know, an important part of history, and I will get them, like Golden Age books. I appreciate Golden Age books, and at some point there will be some that I add to the collection at the appropriate time. But I want to backtrack just a little bit. So you had collected ASM X-Men a while ago. You came back to it. You started collecting that stuff again. What was it about ASM, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, however you want to phrase it, that resonated with you? Because arguably that is like the easiest character to love, right? Because he's everywhere, right? But what was it specifically for you that resonated with that character that prompted you not to collect them once, but twice, and also to complete the run?
The one thing, of course, I loved Peter Parker, loved his stories, but the one thing that always drew me to Spider-Man was his rogues gallery, his enemies. I loved all of his enemies. He had the best enemies out there for me. So that's why, that's primarily the reasons why I collected Amazing Spider-Man. And especially like the stories.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. The stories back in the day, because the current run,
we don't even need to talk about that because I do enough trash talk of that. So
I'm going to add, because the current run needs it. Well, it will be helped soon. So
yes.
All due respect to the creators, but
it is being helped, right?
Yes,
But if you had to pick a favorite character, a favorite villain for Spidey, who would be your favorite villain for him to face off on back in the day? Because I'm assuming you're talking about back in the day villains.
Of course. And it was always the Green Goblin.
Really?
Always the Green Goblin.
Okay.
I love the Green Goblin. Here's the thing. I'll give you a little insight. I love the Green Goblin so much so that when Todd McFarlane took over in the 300s, I was upset at Todd McFarlane because he messed up the look of the Green Goblin. and I was. Look, I know I know that's like one of the more unpopular things to say, but at first I was not crazy about Todd McFarlane because of what he changed in Spider-Man. And when he did that to the Green Goblin, I was done. I'm done.
I'm outside. I don't know what you're doing, but you're messing with the Green Goblin.
I was like, man. So it was the Green Goblin always had a special place because he had a special place in Spider-Man's heart because of what he's done.
Yep.
He was always just as Batman always had Joker, Spider-Man, the Green Goblin. Yep. As much as, I know that everybody loved Venom. Everybody loves Carnage.
I was never into either one.
But yeah, I thought they were okay, but they still could not take the place of the maniacal mindset of Norman Osborn and what he did. So that's why. And here's the thing. This also changed a little bit of how I collected now, because now I started collecting Marvel supervillain first appearances as well. So that
you beat me to the transition, because that was the connection I was about to make. I didn't know you were going to say that about the Rogues Gallery, but as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, I got my connection now.
Yeah,
so what is it about the Marvel super like, because you were very specific about that, like Marvel super villains. What makes you go after the super villains? What's the thought there?
I just thought that they were just for the most part, they were always well created. They were always well created. I loved the art to them. I loved the concepts behind them. I loved their powers. I loved how they could become the main enemy of a certain team, whether it be Amazing Spider-Man or X-Men or Fantastic Four. All of them I had just a great, great love for. Dr. Doom, Green Goblin, Magneto, Abomination, all of them. I just really, and I really loved it when they crossed over into the different comics. That was always you
didn't know what you were going to get then.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Especially like when Juggernaut came over into Amazing Spider-Man, I was like, oh. And he scooped up Madam Web. I'm like, oh.
I brother, you are incredibly animated tonight, and I'm loving it. You got me rolling over here. But again, Donald, like I wanted you on because again, your perspective is a little bit different from the other folks that are collecting, but it's all in service of comics, right? And again, it's like we all look at it a little bit differently, but it's all the same. At the end of the day, it is a love for comics, and I think that you've done a really good job of demonstrating that over the course of this conversation. We're gonna have to have you back on so we can do the bottom row. We'll start working on that. But before I let you go, where can people get a hold of you on the social media?
On YouTube, you can find me at Black Comic Characters. On Instagram, you can find me at Solly2Kings, and on Twitter, Black Comic Characters as well. And before I go, I just wanted to plug two particular comics, especially one that came out today. I saw a mention of this one, Dark Blood by Boom Studios. If you have not checked this out, it just came out today. Please check it out. It's absolutely fantastic. The creator is Latoya Morgan. One of the few.
You know who put me up on that comic?
Who's that?
2021 New Age.
2021?
Like a month ago.
He's on it.
Like a month ago, he was like, he was like, you need to get this book. I think he was like, I have 1,000 ordered already or something.
I know. Yep.
But all right, so that was the one book. What's the other book?
The other book is actually, I know these creators. They're down here in Atlanta, Georgia. This book is based on the Tuskegee Airmen, of course. But I also wanted to point out Tuskegee Heirs, written by Greg Burnham and Marcus Williams. Absolutely great guys. They're down here in Atlanta. There's 3 issues that are out, or there might be 4 now, actually. But these, I mean, the talent of these guys is absolutely fantastic. So you can check them out at TuskegeeHeirs.com. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to them.
And that's perfectly fine, brother. If you send me the link to that, I'll put it up in the description. Because what happens is when people mention stuff, and if I don't, people are like, Reggie, where's the link? Can I get the link? Right. So send it to me and I'll drop it in there. So again, thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Definitely. Thank you.
Oh, I'm too fast on the button. I'm too fast on the clicker. Donald, you have my apologies. So next up, we are going to have on another guest. We have 2 more guests that we are going to be bringing on. And again, we're just having some fun bringing on members of the comic book community, people that support the channel, people that I talk to fairly often, whether it's on camera or off camera. Next up, we are going to bring on my man, Chuck. Chuck, it is good to see you.
It's good to see you, Reg. How's it going?
It is going well. Like Wayne, you and I have spoken many a time on camera in Patreon, but we've never actually had you on the show. So again, it's a great opportunity to change things up.
It's nice to be able to level up and join the crew. So
you got to, again, I'm not getting involved with this punch card stuff, but you know, you do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do. Master Blaster, the Blue Wrench is in charge of all that stuff. But you've been behind the scenes. You've heard some of the conversations that I've been having already. I have the same question for you. When you think about the focus of your collection, how do you articulate it to people? And I don't mean your wife, because your wife probably, like my wife, is like not interested at all. But you know, people that, you know, other people. How would you articulate the focus of your collection?
Yeah, it was really interesting hearing the last guest talk, because I've collected a lot of different things over the years. And one of the things that has been a constant thread has been my interest in animation and animation related comics. And, you know, it was funny because you and I started talking about this. And I remember the first time I went into Capitol Comics 1 here in Raleigh, the late lamented Capitol Comics 1. And there was a $20 wall book. It was the only wall book I knew that I wanted. And it was a Hanna-Barbera TV superheroes book. And I knew them because they showed up every day during elementary school from 3 to 4:30 on Barney's Army on TV. I wanted that book, but it was $20. And, in 1984, that was real money.
All the money in the world, brother, at that time.
Especially when you didn't have a job. But that was one of my first Grail series that I wanted to complete. And looking through the collection, that constant theme has been there, whether it's current series I like right now or things I've learned about. And, you know, it's interesting listening to y'all talk. My background is in cultural studies. I'm a high school teacher, history teacher, but my background's in cultural studies. And so I love the synergy between the animation and the comic strips, and where you can see series that might have only gone like 1 year on TV, but you see them expanded on in the comics. You think of something like Johnny Quest, right? All of us know Johnny. Johnny Quest is my text message. The theme to Johnny Quest is my text message tone. So if it goes off, that means I'm in trouble. But, but you know, it was only one season on NBC, the first run. And yet, you know, Comico did a 32, 33 issue series of it. It's got Dave Stevens covers. I mean, good Lord, can't turn that down. You know, they introduced a love interest. Exactly. That's right. Introduced a love interest for Race Bannon, you know, just to make sure that everybody knew, you know, she gets her own miniseries. I mean, it's that sort of thing you can do that you couldn't do on TV. Mm-hmm. And then there's also the flip side about discovering shows that, you know, only lasted for one season. And YouTube tells me there's a reason they only lasted one season.
Because they're not very good, you mean?
Oh, bless. It's Filmation and Hanna-Barbera in the 60s. That's, you don't, yeah.
So connect the dots for me, like, and maybe crystallize it a little bit more for me. What is it about the connection between the shows and the comics that you enjoy more? Is it really about how the characters from the screen are now in the comic and they're being rounded out and fleshed out and there's more done with them? Or is it more than just that?
It's more just that there's a certain amount of nostalgia. Okay. I mean, there are things that I've gone out there, you know, like if you see me on Discord, you know, I'll post, you know, random Scooby-Doo books I get. I love Scooby-Doo. I can't afford Gold Key Scooby-Doo in high grade. Okay. I didn't rob a bank. Yeah, I don't, my kids didn't get that much financial aid at college. So, you know, but you know, you can find Scooby-Doo. Almost every major publisher, I think, has had the Scooby-Doo license, except Dark Horse and, you know, one or two others. But everyone else, you can find Scooby-Doo books. And
no, keep going. I was interrupting you. I'm sorry.
Which is really cool. And you can see kind of how the character has changed and evolved. And, you know, how times of, I mean, good Lord, Giffen and DeMatteis, you know, they put him in an apocalypse for 3 years in DC Comics. You know, that adult.
Really?
Yeah, it's called Scooby Apocalypse. And, you know, it was surprisingly good, you know.
I would not have expected that, you know.
But
let me ask you this. Do you Scooby-Doo is not necessarily one of those things that's extremely popular as a comic. And it's interesting that you have opted to not necessarily focus on that, but you gravitate towards those types of books. That's not necessarily typical. And I know Tina's in the room, and Tina loves Scooby-Doo. Mm-hmm. So she's probably loving this conversation. But you know, help me to understand, like, there may be people out there that are watching this right now that are like, well, I like this, but it's not necessarily spandex like Reggie likes. Mm-hmm. Help me to understand your mindset when it comes to, you know, enjoying things that are not necessarily the typical or the norm.
Well, for me, there's the intellectual curiosity of just learning about it. And I love the history that coincides with both of them. There is also the challenge of finding the books, you know, where you know how it is, that the hunt of comics.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you can get something like, you know, an Addams Family here.
Oh, check. Can you hold that a little bit closer? That's an Addams Family comic?
An Addams Family animated series.
Check that out.
Jodie Foster apparently was Wednesday Addams on it, which, you know, could explain why she got along so well with Hannibal Lecter. But, you know, but, you know, something like this, it's got, you know, the 60s mod stuff, you know, late 60s, early 70s mod stuff. It's got all these fascinating connections, and it's a real challenge to find. I mean, I've never seen that book before. Part of the fun, you know, is that hunt that we all as collectors enjoy doing. And, you know, no offense to Amazing Spider-Man 361, which I own 2 copies of. if I want to get an Amazing Spider-Man 361, I can go on eBay and there's
right there
80 billion copies of it up online. But, recently I tried to find a Filmation's Ghostbusters #1, and it took me literally 2 months to find this book.
Check that out.
I don't even know how many people even know this series existed. My own kids didn't know this series existed until I showed it to them.
I've never seen that book before either. Tilt the top down a little bit for me.
There we go.
I've never seen that book. And I have, the size of my collection. I have a lot of obscure books. I've never seen either one of those books before.
So for me, there's that joy of tracking that stuff down in the hunt. And, you're not just going to walk into your normal LCS and find this stuff. And that is a lot of the fun, from digging those long boxes, to borrow, excuse me, TiVo for stealing your line, but, for doing those things and being able to find them and then learn the background about them.
Mm-hmm. How do you go about finding out about the series, right? Is it a healthy amount of like research online? Is it talking to other collectors that have an interest in this? Like, I don't know that there's a big group of them on Discord, right? I know we do have a Discord thing and people talk about it, but how do you go about finding these things?
There are a couple of people, there are a couple of tags, I look at on Instagram.
Okay.
And then there's sort of my own research on just sort of your general knowledge, history of animation, TV shows and whatnot. And then, sometimes I'll just search. A large part of my collection was when J&S Comics got a hold of a huge library of file copies of Dell and Gold Key books about 15 years ago. And so every week they were putting up, like the same book over and over again because, they had 10 copies of it. Oh. And you could pick up a Roman Holidays 3 for, $5. And I never heard of Roman Holidays. I seen an ad one time when I looked at a comic book and I said, hey, that looks kind of cool, or you could pick up, a run of Fat Albert or something like that. And you could do it cheaply, which, of course, then feeds you in when you want to get higher grade stuff, and then it's not as cheap.
Do you have Fat Albert? Do you have Fat Albert?
Yes, I do. I have an entire run of it downstairs. I just finished it actually last year.
Check that out. Check that out. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And again, that you collect things that are different from the norm, right? I mean, I like Spider-Man, I like Spandex, I like all that kind of stuff. I like mutants and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I used to watch cartoons. Like, who didn't watch cartoons? But I never really made that jump to the comic book version of what I watched on TV. I mean, even G.I. Joe and Transformers, which are toys and cartoons that I loved, I didn't really read those comics until the last couple of years. And so it's just interesting that you made that leap and you kind of invested in it, and you kind of, I don't know that your collection is primarily that, but it's just an interesting aspect of your collection.
It's funny you mentioned Transformers and G.I. Joe. I'm right on the cusp of where I remember it and I liked it, but I didn't fall in love with it. Where, and I'm kind of the same way with the He-Man. And now, granted, I got the first, 10 issues of Thundercats and, and stuff like that. But, I don't have that same emotional investment with it. But when you get to some of the older stuff, again, like that Hanna-Barbera stuff I was talking about, I remember that being on. And even some of the stuff that's before my time, I remember that. And, you get these guys dressed in these weird 60s outfits and everything. And, you got to see what's inside, just because, nobody in the right mind would have dressed like that. Come on.
Chuck, what were you reaching for down there? Your hand was on something. What were you going for?
Well, I was going to show one more. This is a Hardy Boys.
Oh, check that out.
They had their own TV series, their own animated show. And, I didn't know anything about this, but this actually is older than me. So, but it was really cool to find out about, and just really neat to learn about. So
generally speaking, are you more of a raw comic book collector or a graded comic book collector, or does it just depend upon what you find when you go looking for a certain book?
That's a lot of it right there. It depends on what I find and what I can afford. And, the nice thing about some of these, like that Hardy Boys there, which I got on a short box, they're fairly affordable because, there's me and 5 other people looking for them, I think.
Well,
that
maybe a couple more now that you've done this live stream.
Right. We might get up to 6. So,
We don't want too much competition. I respect it, brother.
But a lot of that is just finding the stuff, finding it out there. I was bidding, and I didn't get it, unfortunately, but I was bidding on a Comics Link auction last week for an Astro Boy 1 in a 4.0 condition, a Gold Key Astro Boy 1. I would have loved to have won that book. So that would have gone, as soon as I set up a wall, that would have gone right up there on that wall. I promise you. But, and that's the problem with hunting down some of the older stuff is they are hard to find.
Yeah.
I mean,
outside of some of the stuff that we've spoken about already, what might be another obscure aspect of your collection that you want to highlight for us? Is there another, like maybe even more obscure than what we've already talked about thus far?
Well, I also like, and I don't have any with me, I also like getting a lot of the TV covers from the Dell Gold Key stuff with the actors and actresses on them. Because again, that's just really neat. And, especially if you like the show, then that's even better. So I've got, again, I show them to you some other time. I've got some Man from Uncle's and Girl from Uncle. And, a lot of these, again, really trippy shows that I didn't see until they showed up on Nickelodeon and MeTV.
Right.
But once they showed up, I'm like, oh man, that's really cool. The Space 1999 and stuff like that, where you look at them, you go, I remember seeing that. And you get that emotional investment there.
So I blame you. I blame you because you sent me that Space 1999. And then I spent a couple of weeks watching that show on YouTube. I mean, it was like futuristic, but they were still wearing bell bottoms. And I'm like, that just doesn't make sense. But yet I watched a bunch of the episodes, so that was a very cool AOK that you hooked me up with. That book is in my obscure comic book bin. And like I said, I watched the show because of you. So I want to say thank you for that, because I honestly enjoyed it. It was like a futuristic 70s space odyssey. It was just weird, Yeah. But I like they used a remote control to open the doors. Like, why is there no sensor,
I don't know what they were thinking, but but it's so much fun discovering this stuff. And then now that I've got kids, and kids who are, 17 and 8, who are 18 now, I can share this with them and show it to them. And, and maybe they looked at Space 1999 and they're like, Dad, this is whack. I don't care if Mom watched it at dinner growing up. We're not doing this. And their reaction to the original Star Trek is much the same way.
Oh no. Hey,
they
need to work on them, because the original Star Trek is dope.
Give them another year or two. They're still not too sure about Beehive headpieces, I think. But we turn right around though, and we got Babylon 5, where I've got all the comics from Babylon 5, and my wife, who I think is the biggest Babylon 5 fan in the world, they're 3 seasons into Babylon 5 and just think it's the greatest, one of the greatest things ever. So,
check that out. Now, and again, Chuck, I've enjoyed our interactions via text, via the Patreon chats that we've done. So it was a fun opportunity, man, to have you on the show to talk a little bit about your collection. And again, one of my goals is to continue bringing on members of the comic book community to just chat, right? Folks that don't necessarily have their own YouTube channels, right, per se, but still have a perspective. And so I want to thank you for sharing yours with us. We're going to have to find a way to get you back on the show as well, because maybe we'll look at those Babylon 5 comics that you have over there. I don't know. We'll find some reason to have you come back on. But before I let you go, where can people find you on the social media?
Instagram, I'm at Chuck Hensey. Same thing with Twitter. And right now, at least, I don't have a YouTube channel. So
you're not sure it's not Clyde, right? Your name's not Clyde?
God, I hope not.
So if you guys didn't watch the video, I did an unboxing, and I butchered people's names. So my bad, brother, my bad. But again, I appreciate you coming on and hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed this. And like I said, we'll try to have you back on again to talk a little bit more.
Love to. Thanks.
All right. I did not cut him off that time, so I'm getting better with my clicker, okay? So the very last guest that we are going to bring on is a guy that has taken Amazing Spider-Man issue number 110, the Gibbon. He has taken the Gibbon to the mountaintop, literally to the mountaintop. I want to welcome to the show my man Alan, aka Climbing Comics. It is good to see you, brother.
Good to see you. Hello, hello. How's it going?
Yeah, man, your picture over there is probably the crispiest picture all night of anyone that's been on thus far. I mean, that's like a professional setup you have going on over there, brother.
Thank you. I, try to emulate people I see.
Your mic's even better than mine. Look at you, all fancy. No, but Alan, it's good to see you, man. And I want to thank you for making some adjustments. You are on the coast that I used to be on, and it was much easier to have you on before. But I want to thank you for carving a little bit of time out to actually come on the show. So, share with people, brother, the gibbon on the mountaintop. Share with people like how that all came about, please.
Yes. So I'm a hockey fan. So I'm a San Jose Sharks fan. And one of the things that Sharks fans do is bring like a poster of the Sharks territory, and they just bring it all around the world, and it says, "This is Sharks territory." So all around the world, you see Sharks fan calling everywhere Sharks territory. So I thought it would be a fun idea to bring Amazing Spider-Man 110 on a trip with me to Peru. So right before, do we still call it Voldemort? So before
No,
Voldemort,
you can say the pandemic now. You can say COVID-19. They won't strike my video now, so it's okay.
Okay. So yeah, in 2019, a buddy of mine had a wedding down in Peru, and I was able to, hike up this glacier. It's like 19,000 feet. And that's where I brought my backpack. The only thing in my backpack was water, a couple of food bars, and ASM 110. Try to keep it as light as possible. So
it was a pretty cool picture, man. It was a cool picture. And I think it's still on my phone somewhere. I mean, I take so many photos, and my kids do as well, so I had to scroll through it. But I thought it was a really, really cool photo. And it was around that time when I was still kind of sort of like pushing back against the gibbon. And then when somebody sends you a photo of the gibbon on the mountaintop, you kind of have to lean in and just embrace it for what it is.
It's the cosmic gibbon at that point. It's like the highest it's ever been.
I forgot about the cosmic. I forgot about that. Well done. So again, the first question that I have for you is as you think about your collection, how do you go about describing your focus and your collection to people that have an interest in understanding your collection?
So a little bit of background here, and it's very different. I chose not to watch all of the previous people, so I'm not like, kind of twisted in their way. So I started collecting kind of in the 90s, and then I stopped collecting between, I guess, like 95 to 2018. So once I started recollecting in 2018, I looked at my original collection, and it was mainly a lot of X-Men, a couple of DCs, Green Lanterns and whatnot, but mostly X-Men, and a lot of like really random issues, like 40, like it'd be 360, and then something in the 400s, like be all spread out. So when I first started, I would say my collection would be filling in like storylines of gaps that I didn't know about in X-Men.
Yep.
So yeah, when I started getting into X-Men, I also found that when I came in 2019, Justice League Dark just came out with its volume 2. And I think before he got super big, James Tynion was writing Justice League Dark for that series, and I just really got into that series, and I was like, wow, this is an amazing story. I didn't know about all these magical creatures or like people that are not like superheroes, and I really got into that. So mainly my collection has been, of course, as a 90s kid, X-Men, Spider-Man, some Batman here and there, but most recently Justice League Dark.
But why X-Men? Like, because you touched on X-Men like at least a couple of times. What was it about the X-Men that attracted you, that spoke to you, that resonated with you? Why them?
In the 90s cartoon, they were kind of the outcasts, right? And as like kind of the nerdy kid in school, sometimes you do feel like that outcast. And
wait a minute, are you talking about me and everybody else in the chat when you say the nerdy kid? I just want to be clear. Like,
I'm talking about me. I'm not
okay,
talking about
okay.
But we're all the cool kids now, right? Since everyone loves X-Men.
It's true. So, it's true.
So I think growing up and just like watching the X-Men and knowing the backstory of actual characters made it easier to read the comic book, because without backstory, it was hard to to pick up a book and be like, oh, I'm interested in this character. I think that's what they did for like what GI Joe and a bunch of other toys. They had to give them backstories, but I think having the backstory of X-Men and knowing that they were a team of a kind of misfits, it was a cool thing to stick to and read about and see them, battle their villains and like succeed. Yeah.
Because what's interesting is that that's part of the reason why the X-Men resonated with me as well, right? They were outcasts that were trying to do the right thing, doing the right thing, and still not necessarily being accepted by people and being hated. And I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. I don't know where you grew up, but it's fascinating that we both gravitated towards the X-Men team. And I think that that was potentially the beauty of the people that were working on that title, that they were able to speak to us at different ages, from different parts of the country, right? And I think that that's a really wonderful thing that comics offer us. Would you agree with that? Would you add to that or modify something there?
No, I totally agree with that. Because I was talking to some friends about like, either TV shows or series. Like the fact that you could pick up something and you could take someone that's new to comics, or you could take someone that's been in the comic like, community for a while and have a story that's compelling and pulls, regardless of your background, in that shows a good story there. That's why now I'm starting to read Claremont, trying to figure out all of the history behind what I grew up with in the 90s.
So talk to me about that, because I think that what you mentioned to me is that that's now a focus for you. Why the Chris Claremont 17-year period on the X-Men? Because that's a healthy chunk. What is it about that period that you are hoping to gain by adding that to your collection?
For me, I think it's all about the stories, right? There's I kind of fall into FOMO sometimes, but if I fall into a good story, then I think it's a win-win for everyone. So the history behind of a lot of the characters that I know today were brought up by Chris Claremont, the Dark Phoenix saga, all of the different big storylines that that a lot of like Jonathan Hickman based his history off of comes from the ground up built by Chris Claremont. So, nothing against like Stan Lee, like,
Yeah.
1 through 94 was really great, but the thing that, advanced the story so much was Chris Claremont. So that's why when you did your interview with him and you got some background and insight about his run on it, that was a really cool thing to listen to.
Brother, he's amazing. He is amazing to talk up to. And I mean, there was so much stuff that he was like, turn the camera off. Turn the camera off. I'm gonna tell you this story, but turn the camera off. Are you recording this? And I was like, no, Chris, I'm not recording this. And his wife was like, check his pockets, right? Like we had a lot of fun, but there were so many just stories that just spill out of this man that you can't. You have a better appreciation for the comics when you interact with him and see just how much thought goes into it, And he told me this story about how he takes a notebook with him, and he carries multiple pens and a notebook, and he sees and or observes things and he writes them in the notebook, and then he takes those observations and strings them together in a story. And I was like, he's like, I don't make stuff up. I just observe things and tell them in the comic. And I was like, check that out. Right. That's why we get the X-Men women out shopping in New York in a comic, right? Because he probably observed it, or at a beach, where they're sunbathing and jumping in the water and frolicking, because Chris was probably at a beach doing this stuff. And it's exactly. Cool backstory that I think makes you appreciate the comics a little bit more,
Oh, yeah. And it's definitely a reflection of the times, right? Because now that I'm reading some of the X-Men, it is like 80s hair and get up and 90s hair and get up were really in the books. And it's like, whoa, this is a blast from the past. So
what do you think about that, right? Because you just raised a good point, that one of the things that Chris Claremont did oftentimes was pull in current events, current styles, current activities. He had a lot of news reports and things like that in his stories. But we've moved away from that to some degree or another. Do you think that that's good or bad for comics to either be timeless or time bound? Is there a preference there from your perspective?
I'm really glad you brought up this question, because recently I've kind of bounce back and forth between stories that are like, really sci-fi, and it just doesn't make any sense to this time today, and other books that are very timely today. I think honestly, I do like the timepieces, because if it were 50 years from now and I could read on it, it may seem like a little hokey if I were to read it 50 years from now, but it would be a true reflection of today. And that's why books are not just stories; they're pieces of history as well. I think that's what we're kind of collecting, and we're trying to build. But you can't always. Sometimes I get superhero fatigue, so I'll drop some of the books and read something a little bit more science fiction, something a little bit more horror, and then switch back. So I have to have a little bit of both to make sure that like I don't just fall off and just get tired of one thing over the other.
You just touched on something interesting, that your interests are wide ranging. It's not just Spider-Man or X-Men. I mean, you also mentioned sci-fi, futuristic stuff. Do you think that that's part of what keeps you interested in comics, the fact that there is so much diversity out there that you can kind of explore different things and have a different type of fun? Is that how you would characterize what you just spoke to a second ago?
Yeah, I would say compared to a lot of comic readers and collectors, I'm fairly novice in the game, because I got back into the game in 2019. So I'm on Instagram. I watch a lot of YouTube, so I read a lot of the main content of like the X-Men, Spider-Man, Justice League, that type of stuff. But you know, other people bring up some side stories of like, for example, I recently read Rick Remender's Black Science. That was a really weird futuristic type of thing, and that actually made me appreciate some stuff a little bit more. Right, watching the Loki series, looking at like things about time and all of this good stuff. I actually think that they feed into each other.
Check that
Honestly.
out.
Yeah.
Check that out. And again, I think again, there's no wrong way to do this hobby, right? And I think that's kind of what we've been demonstrating over the course of these conversations that we've been having, is that there's no wrong way to do it. And there, honestly, even though you didn't hear some of the other people, your story is similar in some ways and also different in some ways. And it's just kind of cool to hear how everyone's slightly different, yet sort of the same. And I think that's one of the cool things about doing something like this. One of the other things that we talked about was how you've made some pivots to how you've collected because of things that are happening right now. Can you talk a little bit more about like what you were focused on, how you pivoted, and the rationale behind that pivot?
Yes. So we talked about this on Instagram quite a bit. So this year, at the beginning of the year, I posted like on Instagram and YouTube, my 2021 goals are, this is the year of X, right? This is when I was going to go hard on X-Men. This was in January. As we all know, February, so on, everything just like rose like crazy. At that point, I fell off the rails a little bit, and I fell into FOMO, went off my goals, and bought a bunch of books that I didn't really see in my long-term collection. So in June, when I did like my kind of mid-year review of myself, I saw that, hey, what have I collected versus what I have or what I wanted to? And it's on opposite sides of the spectrum. So now I've refocused to, going for some of the lower key X-Men books, just trying to fill in like what I can in the meanwhile. But I'm still reading the books digitally on Marvel, the Marvel Unlimited app. So at least I'm learning the stories. But now I'm figuring out there are actually books that I find key that are not key in terms of characters. I just like that storyline. So I had to pivot from that, and I even went for like a Grail book, which I was part of my 2022, 2023 goals, but it was like still in a not so in outer space kind of reach for me to obtain that book. So I brought in some long-term goals into 2021 and moved some 2021 goals out because it doesn't make sense to get certain books at the prices they are right now.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that just because you have a goal doesn't mean that you can't modify that goal based upon the environment changing and shifting, because this has been a year, well, I mean, technically 18 months or whatever the time period has been, in which we've seen significant increases in price. And so I think people have to make adjustments and pivot where it actually makes sense to do so, while still, and this is the bigger point, still enjoying the hobby. You might not be buying some of the books, but you're reading them digitally. You're still enjoying the hobby. You're still part of it, because I see a lot of people that are like, oh, books are too expensive, I'm out of this hobby. And it's like, well, I thought you loved the hobby. You know, you can still be in the hobby even if you're not buying the major keys. Would you, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, it's all about the books. It's all about the stories. It doesn't matter if it's digital or like on paper. For me, like, collecting is part of the hobby. Knowing the stories is another part of the hobby. Just like learning about the history of the different, like Chris Claremont, like his background, or artists and their background, that's part of the story. So there's like so many different facets of comic collecting that, you know, if one falls by the wayside for now, that's fine. There's so much else to learn about.
Yep. There's cleaning
Yeah.
comics, there's pressing comics, there's doing
Exactly.
YouTube content. Like, there's so many aspects to this thing that you don't necessarily just have to buy that major key in order to be participating in some of this stuff, you know? And I think that, again, it's one of the cool things, you know? So, one of the things I think you also said that you wanted to really focus on was completing your run of Spider-Man. Was that correct?
Oh, I no, that's not me.
Oh, that wasn't
I'm
you. Okay, so my notes got jumbled, so that's my bad. We're going to ignore that part. The
I'd
other
like to.
question, say that again.
I'd like to, you know, I have some Spider-Man, but not a lot. Yeah.
But when getting back to the Claremont stuff, right? That's 17 years. How much progress have you made on completing that run? Or are you being just super selective and picking up what you can pick up? Because even with X-Men in that run, prices have also gone up as well.
Definitely. So luckily last year, before the huge increase in price, my 2020 goals was to complete the Dark Phoenix saga, which I got. And that's where a lot of the more key books and more pricey books are right now. So I was lucky. Right now, I'm trying to fill in like the 95 to the 130s. So that's kind of the pre-Phoenix saga, because I feel like those are the ones that are going to be a little bit harder for myself to obtain in the future if prices still keep going up. But things afterwards in the 150s and so on, I could just save for later. So I'm focusing on 95 through 130 this year.
So maybe somebody out there listening will lend you a hand and reach out to you and be like, hey, let me hook you up with some of these books. But Alan, again, brother, I want to thank you for coming on and chatting with me a little bit. You've been on the show, what, like 3 times now? Is this the 3rd time?
Yeah, this is the 3rd time.
Yeah.
This is the 3rd time.
So I definitely appreciate your perspective. I appreciate you taking my call whenever I reach out. I'm like, hey, you want to come on? It's awesome when people actually are like, yeah, I can come on. So I want to say thank you for that. We're also going to, again, like the other guests, find a way to bring you back on at some point for a topic that makes sense, right? So sit tight. We'll make some magic happen. But before I let you go, you are on Instagram and you are on YouTube. Do you want to go ahead and let people know where they can find you on the social media if they want to reach out and or watch some of your content?
Definitely. So for those that want to reach out to me on Instagram, my name there is Climbing Comics 452. And on YouTube, you could find me at Climbing Comics. So this will be my I got to do that, right? So you remember Climbing Comics. So you could find me there.
It kills me every time. It really does. And I never expect it, and then you do it, and I'm caught off guard, and I enjoy it every time. It's just one of those gifts that keep giving, you know.
Exactly.
But again, brother, I thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your perspective, especially as somebody that's relatively new, right? New. I appreciate you coming on and talking with us a little bit.
Great. Thank you.
All right. So there you have it. 4 different perspectives, right? And over the course of this conversation, we've spoken to 4 different people who collect and think differently, yet they all love comics. And I think that that's one of the really cool things about this hobby. We've said it before that there's no wrong way to do this. And I think you have to find something that makes you happy, that resonates with you, and then you just do that thing. And it doesn't matter whether it's spandex or Scooby-Doo, you just have to go for it. And I definitely want to thank each one of my guests for coming on the show. I reached out to these folks and was like, hey, here's the idea, loose concept, and each and every one of them showed up and delivered. And I think we all are going to walk away with an improved understanding of who they are, how they collect, and maybe it'll even lend itself to maybe us doing something a little bit different with our collections. And as I mentioned, this show is going to be rebroadcast on the podcast. So if you're interested in taking some Reggie on the go, you can definitely search for Reggie Collects on your favorite podcasting platform. If you guys have not watched the video, the 5 tips video that I released earlier this week, I definitely want to encourage you guys to check that video out. It was a video on forgetting about balance. And I want you to watch this video because it is a sponsored video by my friends over at Shortbox, who are giving us, or technically you, an opportunity to get a $100 credit for something that you may actually purchase on Shortbox. So by watching the video and leaving a substantive comment behind, you will actually be in the running to win this giveaway. And we are going to do the random drawing. I think I'm going to do it on next Wednesday. So you still have a little bit of time to watch it. And then stay tuned. Tomorrow, I'm going to be releasing the top 10 most submitted books into CGC. There's a couple of surprises on the list. And as I mentioned earlier this week, I have some enhanced data that I think are going to allow us to have a little bit more transparency as to what it is that we as a community are sending in to CGC to be graded. Again, huge shout out to all of my guests. I want to thank each and every one of you for hanging out with me and chatting and being part of the discussion. We went a little bit longer tonight, but I definitely enjoyed the conversation and hope you guys did as well. As always, if you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Reggie Collects. Take care.